All right. Welcome. Oh, welcome everyone. I see some familiar faces already, or names, I should say. Welcome. My name is Brittany Higginbotham. I'm the Communications and Outreach Manager at the Institute for Public Relations. I'm going to give just a couple seconds longer to let a few people join. I have a few just very brief housekeeping announcements before I introduce our speakers and hand it over to them to start today's webinar. Okay. All right, I'll just get into the housekeeping notes. This is being recorded and it will be available for replay on our website and YouTube channel within 48 hours. And I will send it as an email to our registrants as well. If you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the chat, and the Q&A. We'll have a moderated Q&A at the end of the session. If you have any technical difficulties, I am happy to assist. Just message me. And I don't know if you can see, we'll share in the chat as well. You are all welcome to connect with our panelists today on LinkedIn after the call if you have any further questions that may not get addressed. But with that, I would love to introduce our panelists. We have our moderator as Samantha Stark, founder of Fusion. For our panel today, we have Brian Snyder, Global President of Digital at Axicom, Caitlin Rourke, Senior Consultant of Corporate Affairs at Dell Technologies, and Jeff Davidoff, Chief Marketing Officer, Influence AI. Today, they will present a webinar or a panel on AI-powered answer engines and the shifts in digital reputation building. So thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions, message me. But other than that, I will hand it over to Sam to kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate it. And so right now, when you're looking at Gen AI, it's transforming a lot of different things, and online search is no different. It's truly a pivotal moment across the board for content strategy, for brand visibility. And before we jump into the questions, what I'd like to do is just start with foundation and what are we really talking about here? So we are talking about those summaries that come up within LLMs. So we're talking about the ChatGPT summary, the Google summary, Copilot, Perplexity, Claude. And so what's really fundamentally different about how search is changing and reputation is changing is that your user is asking a question, and then in a very natural language, they're getting a very concise, succinct answer that is given to them in a very different form. It's not a bunch of different links. It is an answer with a few top things, and some have some links and some do not have some links. So that really, when you look at the end of it, that results for brands specifically in a potential big loss in organic traffic. That also means the search terms they're using, that needs to change as well. And so I've seen a lot of different data on this, but the biggest one that I've seen in terms of this drop is that there could be a 50% drop in the next 4 years for organic search, and that's coming from Gartner. So with that, I'm going to jump right in, and we're going to start with you, Brian, really looking at when you look at the rise overall of these AI-powered answer engines, at Axicom specifically, how are you seeing this change in digital reputation building for brands right now?
Sam, right now, not enough, to be honest. Brand marketing and corporate communications leaders are, for the most part, just now starting to pay attention to how consumers and other stakeholders might experience their brand through AI in the future. And how their brand shows up in these AI answer engines today. So most marketers that I speak with are focused on what I call the inside out view of AI and how it can really supercharge their team's work. But it's my hope that after today's panel, we're going to have marketers and communicators really start to consider the outside in view of how AI may change the way that consumers and other stakeholders experience brands. And act now to protect and strengthen their brand and corporate reputation for this AI-powered future media landscape.
Yeah. And to dig into the outside piece of it versus inside, do you mind just expanding on what does that mean from the inside point of view?
Sure. From the inside point of view, everybody is looking at how we can use tools whether they are the base LLMs, whether they are marketing specific applications like Jasper, to Microsoft Copilot and some of those things, plus the things that we're building internally, like WPP Creative Studio. Had to give a plug for that, right? As part of the WPP Open AI powered marketing operating system. So, like, that's all. How do we do what we do better? How do we do it more efficiently? How do we do it more effectively? But where I think people are missing the boat is not thinking about how's this going to change the people that we're trying to talk to and talk with. Whereas, like you said in your intro, Sam, that today you Google something and you get this list of 10 blue links and you read some of them and you don't, and you come up to your own conclusions. Versus in an AI answer engine world, you're asking a question, it's doing the research for you, and it's bringing that back. So that has huge implications from a consumer marketing perspective. It also has huge implications from a B2B marketing perspective. You know, you get those beautiful PowerPoint models of this is the buyer decision journey for an enterprise IT decision maker, and it's got all those boxes and arrows and things. What if that all gets simplified into ask, answer, buy? Like, you've got to be ready for a different kind of future. But it's also, even what I just said is about proactively people going out to answer engines, asking questions. When you look at some of the my favorite thinkers in AI, like Jeremiah Ouyang, looking at what's going on from the AI agent perspective. So maybe in the future, I'm not even searching. I've got an agent that's doing the searching for me. Hey, Brian, you might love this article. You might love this product. And perhaps even in the future, it's even doing the buying for me and delivering me stuff. Hey, noticed you're out of toilet paper, so I bought the same brand that you like. Or, hey, noticed you're out of toilet paper, I bought you the Amazon equivalent of that was rated as highly as the Charmin or whatever it is. So there's huge implications for this kind of outside in view. And I hope that everybody starts thinking about how does this change the way that our target audiences, whether they're consumers, B2B, corporate stakeholders, how they experience the brand and get ready for that?
Yeah. And it's funny, I was looking for some recent stats around this and just around the drop in sort of organic search in general. And I couldn't find anything super recent, but even in 2023, at the end of 2023, there had been already a 10% drop. And I think there are a lot of different reasons, but if you were to compare to what that is now, that's got to be at least quadrupled. Caitlin, from the brand perspective and like really looking at Dell, like what shifts are you starting to make? Because I know you're a bit ahead of the game from the reputation management perspective.
Yeah, so I'd say I'm definitely not saying anything new here, but we know that these AI answer engines are very much a double-edged sword, right? We know there's untold opportunity, but there's also a heightened risk from a reputation management standpoint. And I think we're all as communicators trying to wrap our head around that. But all of these really seemingly seismic shifts we've seen as communicators, email, smartphones, the rise of social media underscore the same principle at the end of the day, and they just underscore the need for us to cover new and different bases. So I think that, I'm guessing that most folks on this call are either directly responsible for or adjacent to being charged with doing what we can to protect our organization's brand. So when it comes to these AI answer engines, I think what we've really leaned into from an approach, and then I'll talk about, specific shifts that we've taken, but I think the guiding mindset for us has been having a realistic sight picture of what we can influence, what we can impact, where the potential pitfalls are, and how we use these tools to our advantage, which has been key for us. I'll probably touch on some of what Brian mentioned about the use of these tools from an efficiency standpoint and a content creation standpoint. But it's really helped us at Dell to have this mindset to stay clear-eyed. It's really easy to get overwhelmed by this unknown, and it's been kind of liberating for us to admit just how dynamic and ever-changing this new world is, and just admit to where we simply might have a more limited impact. So we try to keep that the two sides of opportunity, both for advantage and for risk, in mind when we approach how we're viewing reputation management with regard to these AI engines or search engines rather. And, as far as opportunity for advantage, we know that AI answer engines help us see trends. They help us conduct research. They help us get instantaneous feedback and insights into public perceptions. They help us do market analysis, all at breakneck speed. So all of that can shape how what we do to shape our brand and to manage our reputation generally. And it's helping us to craft content and deliver messages to audiences that are just obtaining their information differently, as you just alluded to. We used to have to use a lot of bells and whistles to get this kind of mirror to the world. And these tools are really doing it for us in a fraction of the time. So I think looking at it as something that can make you smarter and more nimble is really important. And we also have really looked at this as communicators, for the need to aggressively lean into this new world as communicators to understand how LLMs are prioritizing and processing different types of data. Moving beyond this focus of traditional search, we are a very large organization. We have a large marketing department, much like a lot of organizations. People have been in this industry and doing this craft for a really long time, and it does represent a pretty seismic shift. And so there's an education and upskilling piece that I know we're going to touch on a little later in this, I'm sure. But from an opportunity for risk standpoint, we also have to consider how the threat landscape has changed, with regard to the potential for misinformation, for disinformation. So we're taking, I think, the opportunities to make us smarter about our brand, and also using it to, ensuring that that's a component of our issue and crisis management planning. So I think trying to kind of keep those two sides of opportunity, both the opportunity for advantage and for risk in mind as we think about it. And so for us, that's really meant looking to the when you think of a crisis playbook, and we're talking more, reactive crisis management or reputation management, a lot of people have those old PowerPoints or binders, right? And they're gathering dust, and maybe you do a tabletop exercise occasionally, but this has to be faster. This has to be this has to be woven into everything that we do. So we've really tried to see this as a new dimension, just like any other dimension that we consider, any lens that we look through as we consider our communication strategy and content strategy, both for good and for the potential for the many negative consequences that can come with this shift.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you're talking about, sort of having to be faster, because with that, that's absolutely true. There's so much more content that raises the level of expectations of how good your content needs to be in order to break through, in order to also have the authority and the interest. And so I feel like that's been on the minds of a lot of senior marketers, which is, wow, I need to now raise my content game so significantly. And I also have to have a lens of problem solving in a very fast-paced environment. To your point, I feel like it was probably about 2 months ago when I can't recall exactly which company it was, but they used ChatGPT to write their holding statement in a crisis, and people could tell, and it was completely inappropriate. And that was very damaging to their brand. So it's probably good that I don't remember who it was. Jeff, I'll jump over to you. Talking about reputation management and kind of just what are the tools that people need within the age of AI?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So let's start with the challenge. Kind of bluntly, AI engines right now are essentially rewriting the internet. As we're sitting here every month, to ChatGPT alone, hundreds of millions of consumers are going directly, generating literally billions of responses. And a lot of those users are going, taking that information and creating more content. So there's a giant initial impact, and then there's kind of like this secondary echo effect. And these AI narratives, these answers aren't confined just to that one-to-one with consumer. They've already leapt the fence, as Brian was talking, into search results, and the same thing's true for social. So clearly, these engines are already hugely influential, and that influence is growing rapidly. But let's not kid ourselves. These engines are not benign. They're biased. And they're biased based on the information they've been trained on. And also, frankly, they sometimes just make things up. But oddly, despite the fact that their answers are not always very trustworthy, they are highly trusted. And to make this bad situation a little bit worse first, most troubling for brands right now, you have no idea what's being asked or answered. I like to think of these big AI engines as like the 20 most influential people on the planet. And here's what's really going on. The 20 most influential people on the planet are talking directly to your customers, You have no idea what they're saying. You're unable to identify and address things that are wrong, or identify and leverage things that are right. That's why we invented Influence AI, right? So what's our tool and how does it fit into this thing, right?
Yeah.
So we've essentially developed our own proprietary LLM that looks into and monitors what their other LLMs are saying about your brand. We do it at first a very simple basis like accuracy, is this right or wrong? But more interestingly, more nuanced, and probably more importantly, we monitor for sentiment and bias. A minute ago I said, think of these as the most influential people on the planet. Hey, just like people, these engines can be biased for or against you. And that bias has a tremendous impact on their responses. We do like little snapshots of brands all the time. And every time we do one, we see something that is like breathtakingly wrong. Okay. But rest assured, we don't just tell you that you're sick. We have ways to make you well. So built into our platform are tools that help fix these problems through a process we call remediation. So that's a little bit about us. But the real question is like, so how does our tool fit into the others? Right. And like a lot of things in marketing, it doesn't replace anything. I'm sure everyone on this call is using some form of traditional brand monitoring tool, using one or several of the hundreds of social media monitoring and management tools. But we think of AI narrative as its own new media. So you got traditional, social, and now you have AI media. And right now, we find ourselves in a group of one in terms of tools that help brands monitor and manage what's going on in that new form of media. So the point of view, I think, of what you need is you need everything. Okay, you need what you did traditionally, you need what you're doing in social, and now you need a purview into what's going on in this new media vertical of AI narratives. And I think the winners are going to be the people who are really smart about how they integrate it, right? Because if I said before, hey, the AI narratives are bleeding into search and they're bleeding into social, the people who are able to find the interrelations between this data and get to the root cause of problems or opportunities, I think are the people who are going to be the real winners.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'd love to dig in a little bit on the remediation point, because I'm sure that's what everyone wants to know, particularly people who have seen that they're being misrepresented within these summaries. Like when you think about traditional sort of cleanup in SEO, that can take a really long time. Like, and I'm sure it just depends on the situation. Like it's all situational as well as like, where is that information coming? But what is like a typical timeline or process look like for the cleanup of something like that?
When we do it over the course of a year. That doesn't mean it takes a year to fix it, but you need to make sure that it sticks. There are really important differences. Like we all have Google brains, okay, which is like, oh, there's something wrong. I will send it to this site and tell it what to do, and it will be fixed. There is no telling these engines what to do. They draw their own conclusions based on information that they've taken from other places and the different weightings and priorities they put on that information. So we essentially do like a machine to machine conversation in order to, over time, influence those engines. And it is over time. I wish I could say like there's some kind of magic pill. There isn't. But I will say what is magic is this can't be done directly by humans. You can't figure out what engines are really saying about you by sitting in front of your computer and typing a bunch of queries. And you also can't have any influence on what those engines are saying just by having people do it. We found that LLM to LLM interaction is really the magic difference maker.
That's super interesting. Caitlin, in terms of strategic planning, I would love to hear sort of your thoughts on how you think things need to shift, just going off of the tools. And also, I know you're very involved in the industry. Like, do you feel as if your peers and there's the sense of urgency that should be a part of this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do have the opportunity. There are benefits of being in-house, and one of those is that I get to interface with a lot of peers at other organizations, not just in tech, but across industries, and certainly the panelists do as well with their clients. And as I mentioned earlier, I think there's definitely a fear of the unknown. I think the intimidating acronyms and terms in this world can lead to some myopia and some stagnancy. I see it especially, for again, really seasoned marketers, I mean, just saying it like it is, it's a huge seismic shift for them. So there's a lot of trepidation, a lot of risk aversion, understandably, with AI in general. And I think just the risk surface area has increased a lot, and that goes to every corner, not just within communications, marketing. And I think that that's coloring a lot of the internal decision making about AI and leading to, well, how can we use these tools to focus on our own internal efficiency and not sort of approaching the beast head on. So I think that there has to be just an upfront recognition that these AI engines are gatekeepers, right, for our reputations. Things are changing, right? That's for us, at Dell. It's for our customers, for our partners, for our vendors, importantly for our analysts and for media, for potential employees who may be finding, learning more about the organization. It's not going to change. And I think that failing to adapt and failing to make this a new lens through which we're crafting content and also just our overall communication strategy is a really easy way to fall far, far behind. I was part of an industry call fairly recently with some other communicators. And a slight majority of participants said that they were using Gen AI in some form or fashion. And for those dipping their toes in the water, experimenting with tools, as Brian alluded to, the vast majority are focusing on creating content or, increasing productivity, or they're taking an existing tool, Sprinkler, for instance, and using some AI functionality, and maybe there's some SEO considerations layered in there or something else. But as a whole, there's this whole other dimension to it, which is, how are you and how is your brand showing up to these AI answer engines? And so I did want to say one small thing on that, only because I think it's very emblematic of where we are and just my assessment. And it's, a sample size of a couple hundred of my peers. But there was a McKinsey report that came out fairly recently based on their technology trends outlook for the year. And one of the nuggets and one of the terms that they used was called pilot purgatory. And it was basically talking about how organizations are launching these pilots and these proofs of concept. They're getting caught up in AI enthusiasm and saying, well, let's try something, right? But then they don't scale it properly. And so you almost create this cycle of like, well, we're just trying to get past this hurdle. And I see that a lot. And in talking to other folks, who are communicators in-house at organizations, again, across industries, it's a real challenge. And I think it really limits your ability to kind of widen your aperture. The organizations that have done it really well, and I would give Dell a very high ranking, seem to be evangelizing the need for this, giving their teams upskilling to be successful. And I think really importantly, talking about the why, communicating that clearly and often, because ultimately, you're going to hear a lot of things today and a lot of terms and a lot of things where it can, again, feel overwhelming by all of the things you need to go get smart on. But we can't really craft thoughtful strategies that move the needle if we don't understand these foundational elements. So I think it's on us as communicators and as leaders who are managing teams to help with that upskilling. Because from what I see, I mean, again, my candid assessment is a lot of people are giving lip service to the topic, right? Or they're saying, of course, we're on board, right? Instead of seeing the immense opportunity to shape the narrative and shape your reputation. Now, I will say it's really promising. There was some new data that came out in a report that said, just in the past year, I think, and I'm using data here only because, we can share the links to these in the follow-up email. But to show you just how quickly things are moving, and if your organization is not leaning forward in a way that you feel good about, then it may be time to either implement that or start asking your manager for that. But there was a report from August from KPMG that polled 200 plus C-suite leaders, and 69% of respondents said that they are training their workforce to take advantage of AI. 61% reported hiring new AI talent. That is compared to 12% and 24% respectively from 1 year ago. And I mean, that's where we are now. And that is, when you're looking up a term, I'm thinking of, RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation, right? And like that term is something that a lot of companies, Dell included, want to be associated with very prominently. And it's not just going into Google and looking that up. When an exec goes and looks for that and sees that maybe we're not in the top results, there's so many more layers of education that are involved in reconditioning people. And I think us as communicators, it's really incumbent on us to get smart on that. So it feels like where leaders are leading from the top, those organizations are really able to lean in the intentional way that they need to be successful in this new world.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. There's a lot of parallels in not just what we're talking about here, but I think adoption in Gen AI just in general. There has been this sense of, the companies are trying to do the right thing. They're doing pilots, they're doing education, but it's just not the level of change management that's necessary in this situation, because it requires ongoing efforts in snackable pieces as well as outside support to actually change people's behaviors. So I think there's a lot of very disappointed senior leaders out there who've been trying to do this adoption and have been hitting those exact same challenges because it's bigger in this circumstance. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit into sort of content strategy adaptation. And so, Brian, why don't we go to you and just talk a little bit about, is there anything that you're really focusing and advising your clients on to modify their kind of their content strategy right now for better visibility? Oh, you're on mute.
Of course, it wouldn't be a webinar if we didn't have it happen at least once, right? Like everything else that we do in modern marketing communications, this all starts with data. You need a way to audit and monitor how your company, your brands, your products, your services, and your people show up in these AI answer engines. And that's where a company like Jeff's comes in. And then you need to align all of your communications across Marcom's disciplines in service of influencing these AI answer engines going forward. And selfishly, that's where an agency like ours comes in. So a simple 5-step framework might look like this. You start with an audit of the current state. Do you like what the answer engines are saying about your company, brands, products, services, and people? And also where you fit relative to your competitors, how you show up in responses about your category. So audit the current state and then set a vision for the future state. What's the change that you want to create in these AI answer engines? So like Caitlin was talking about, if Dell wants to be synonymous with RAG, let's align earned media, social media, owned media, paid media, Wikipedia. Let's take advantage of the kinds of automated remediation that Jeff mentioned. So putting an aligned plan together and then coordinating execution across these Marcom's disciplines and break down silos inside organizations. I always used to say that social media is where you see the seams of organizations where messaging is different across different parts of the organization. I think that the AI answer engine is going to take that to the next level because it's really going to show you what is the accurate representation of what the internet thinks of your brand, of your products, of your people. So start with an audit, set a vision, align plans, coordinate execution, and then measure your progress along the way. Are you seeing the change that you want to create? Because this is going to be a journey of continuous learning and optimization. The landscape is not static. We're going to continue to see shifts in how these different answer engines work. As more agents come online, we're going to see that impact us. So you're going to have to be a little nimble, but it's all about do we know what the changes that we want to create? And then how do we measure that progress along the way?
That's great. And Jeff, I'd love to get your point of view because obviously influencer AI is a super, you're focused on this. So obviously you really understand the impact it's going to have, but can you maybe talk a little bit about how wide and deep you think the impact's going to be? And is there anything else that it reminds you of?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I'm going to start with a warning, which is questions about the potential impact of AI in marketing lead to outrageous sounding statements. I'm going to try my best not to sound hyperbolic, but the truth is that's harder than you'd think because I actually do think the impact's going to be so profound. I'll start with a couple of bold and true statements, right? I mentioned earlier that AI isn't confined to its own silo, right? That AI narratives hop the fence into search and the social. Brian mentioned earlier, you do a Google search, What do you see at the top? A Gemini-powered response. Guess what's powering Facebook and Instagram and X? They're proprietary AI engines. So what's it mean? First, traditional SEO as we know it is dead. The idea that the top thing you're going to see that's going to be in a conversational form that's coming directly from an AI means that the traditional tools of SEO have zero impact on that. And I think the bigger thought or statement is that AI narratives are essentially becoming the core data source for pretty much everything else. Just think about that for a second. The core data source for pretty much everything else. So you want to affect search results, you need to affect the AI behind it. You want to impact social, you need to impact the AIs behind it. And that in that sort of mindset, reputational issues in search and social are essentially symptoms of root cause problems at the LLM level. And that's why we end up just really focusing at that LLM level. I realize as I'm saying all this, maybe I failed at not sounding hyperbolic, but I do think that's all true. And, yes, the other part of the question was, how is this similar to or different from prior evolutions in digital marketing? Everything that comes, Caitlin was listing all those things. Everything seems to be bigger and faster than what preceded it. But I do think that the truth is that websites and search took some time to really have a mass impact. Social was definitely faster. AI is way faster. One of the most wildly overused terms is the word exponential, but it actually applies here. And I think because of that, and I think Caitlin was really talking to it, the brand reputation landscape has never been more chaotic or opportunistic. My experience in times like this, it's that this is how you get new sets of winners and new sets of losers. And I understand how there can be an urge. I love that phrase, pilot purgatory. I understand how there could be a natural urge to try and dip your toe in the water. My experience is that's a huge mistake. Early adopters get the benefit of being first movers, and also importantly, they help shape what the market is going to turn into. Also keep in mind, while we're here talking, these engines are out there learning. They're learning from everything, right? They're learning from websites, they're learning from social, they're learning from prompts, they're learning from their own answers. So when they get things wrong, and they are, I see it, that can spread very quickly, and also over time can get harder to undo because they essentially get more convinced of something. So I think my strongest takeaway from this is really what Caitlin was talking about is, as marketers, maybe we had the luxury to wade into search and social, but we need to dive into AI.
That's really helpful. And we're going to move into the sort of the last question piece. And so we'll keep going with you, Jeff, because I want to say if there's one thing that each one of you would recommend. I know that, Brian, you gave a great framework, but if those listening could only do one thing, what is that one thing that you would recommend that they do today?
Give me one and a half. I think the first one is I just said dive in. You have to use this tech and you have to use it regularly. Okay. I'm a career marketing professional. I'm essentially in the creative idea business, right? But I always thought of myself as better like a counterpuncher, reacting to an idea than sort of being an initial idea generator myself. So I'm training my own customized AI chatbot, who's sort of like my brainstorming buddy. And I've vetted a bunch of things that I've written in the past. And I also work with it like a person. So we were doing, I think we were doing something last week, and I got a response, and I was like, that's boring. A little humor would help. Oh, by the way, don't be afraid to try a pun. And something way better came out. And there is magic in doing this. And I would even say for people who are in big organizations, the way that you'll get some of your people involved is starting to use it. One other quick thing, which is for people who want to know what this is going to turn into. That old Wayne Gretzky quote, you can't skate to where the puck is, you got to skate to where it's going. Try this. Imagine what you think could happen 5 years from now. What's some amazing thing, impact this technology could have 5 years from now? And then realize that's what's going to happen in June of 2025. And when you get your brain working that way, I think then you're in the right headspace.
That's great. I couldn't agree more. Caitlin, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I would say, wherever you are in this journey, I think this is relevant. A lot of people are faced with resource constraints, time and money and human capital, right? And for us, getting back to basics has been really instrumental. So I think that it's twofold. One is, of course, learning and upskilling and being that advocate. And I'm going at this from the perspective that maybe you don't have as enthusiastic of a leadership team, or you haven't gotten too involved in this yet. But I think that for us, it's been, being hyper vigilant about the messages that we're putting out. It's looking at our online presence. What Wikipedia has been mentioned a few times today. And I'll say that, if you're trying to kind of craft a plan, and, whether it's, very explicitly or doing it more subtly, to try to condition the environment for your leaders, for your team, for whoever you are servicing, whether you're an agency or in-house, is looking at the data. When you pull the numbers, which are, you can very easily pull for your Wikipedia presence, to look at just pure visits, if that's the metric that's going to, convince people that they need to maybe revisit your, what's said about you, and maybe there's some inaccuracies or there's some outdated information or something you don't want out there in the public domain, because of, inaccuracies or the fact that it's dated, then use that metric. But I mean, make the case internally. And also, again, not to make this into sort of a stealthy motion, but, be that internal advocate who's asking people. I think Gen AI tools, to what Brian has referenced a few times, the fact that we are using them for, again, content creation and efficiency for our teams, it can lead to a quantity over quality mindset. And it's like, gosh, look how quickly, Jasper or, Firefly created this infographic for me. And we forget that we're not really going back and saying, well, is this really the most compelling content that we can be putting out there? Are we really showing up and putting our best foot forward as a brand? And so for us, tightening up, what we're saying, how we're saying it, and what we're saying, and figure out what that means to you. It's probably going to mean something different to everyone on this call. But to be sort of that internal advocate, get smart. You don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert in the inner workings of LLMs, but I know enough to be dangerous to help influence how we're crafting our strategy. And when you're talking to, an executive communicator, helping them zero in on, what are the authentic voices of the leaders you support, because those sorts of questions can really help if they are, thinking about, my leader's not happy about his reputation in the market. How do we go change that? All of a sudden, you've got a captive audience who's really interested in this topic and interested in how these answer engines can mold your reputation or an individual's reputation. So I would just say, be that advocate, be that evangelist, and figure out, how to do that by getting back to the basics, to the point you made earlier, Sam, just the high quality content that LLMs are prioritizing. How can you be a good steward of that?
That's great. I love that. Brian?
Do I have to go? Because that was a really good answer. I'll add to what Caitlin said. It would be great if you could be that advocate, but if not, identify that advocate on your team, feed them, nurture them, encourage them. Caitlin's done such a huge job at Dell being the champion for this within her team, going back for more than a year and a half now. But for everybody else on this call, if there's one thing that you could do, and I think you should do today, is take a look at how your brand is showing up across the major AI answer engines now. Just go out to Google Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, all the things. Ask about your company, the products, the services, the executives, the competitors. Ask about your industry and your category. Do you like what they're saying? What would you want to change? What would your CEO call you up and say that she would like to see different in these answers? Does AI think that your brand is a leader or a challenger or an also ran? Is AI mentioning your brand in response to queries about your industry, about your category? This is really the first step on that journey that Caitlin talked about to protecting and strengthening brand reputation in AI. This is something that should be on everyone's radar. I know that there's a lot of talk about this being like the new SEO. Don't think about it just that way. That gets you to kind of a tactical view of it. This is much bigger. This is about the future of your brand reputation and how you maintain brand value going forward. Sam, I know you asked for just one thing, but If you are also going to do one other thing, start looking with a critical eye at every piece of content that your communications and marketing functions are putting out. Ask yourself, what questions might this piece of content be used by an AI answer engine to answer? And then optimize your content to serve as a resource for AI answer engines to use in positioning your brand the way that you want them to position it.
I think we have time to squeeze in one more, because I do want to think about the future, because this is moving so quickly right now, and I think that to me is one of the major takeaways is what you're starting now, but don't be prepared to think like, here's my checklist. That checklist is going to change in 3 months. So I'll stay with you, Brian, and just say, what do you think about the next 3 to 5 years? Do you have any thoughts on what you think PR professionals need to be prepared for, and beyond PR, just reputation professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier about this idea of AI agents. That today it's responsive. You ask a question, it gives you an answer. When it becomes proactive, these agents deliver news and information to you before you even know it. You also look at the developments that Apple Intelligence is doing and things like that, the AI PC, looking at recommending products and services, brands based on the context from your personal email, your calendar, your geolocation, et cetera. Think about the fragmentation. Jeff talked about AI being like the new media landscape. The fragmentation that we've seen in the media landscape in the shift from broadcast to digital now shifts again from digital to AI, because I'm not getting the same news at all that Jeff's getting, that Caitlin's getting, that you're getting. I'm getting something that's customized to me by AI based on what's happening in the world and the personalized context of my life. So when you're thinking about that lens, you've got to be thinking about the AI engines being just as important to you, like Jeff talked about it as being an influencer. How do you influence that influencer, much the way that PR professionals have been trying to inform and influence the public through the medium of the day for hundreds of years?
Yeah. Jeff or Caitlin, anything you want to add before we move into questions?
Just quickly on top of that influencer thing, I really do think that's where this thing is going. These engines are hardwired to please you. And the smarter they get, the better they're going to get at delivering customized content and also like predictive. Oh, and the next thing you want, and the next thing you want. I think that what influencer marketing will mean in 5 years will be completely different and will have very little to do with human beings who have meaningful followers on platforms, and will have almost everything to do with personalized AI.
I'll throw out quickly. This is more from a process standpoint and probably talking more to the in-house folks. Get your manual processes in place, because what I think the pace of things and the volume of things coming through, I mean, I think from a social listening standpoint, you have to have thresholds in place to account for this. You have to, have an infrastructure in place and have sort of process is the best term that I can think. But I think when this comes and the pace that it's coming at, it's going to feel like whack-a-mole, right? In terms of, especially just, and I'm looking at it purely from a crisis management, issue management standpoint. So I think now is the time, and we found a lot of success at Dell as we've adopted AI for various things internally. But it's been really helpful to, again, kind of, use these tools for efficiency. It's great that you can do both at the same time, right? But prepare your teams for working like a well-oiled machine, because that's the only way that teams are going to be able to survive this and keep their head above water. So I would always encourage people, even with the incredible technology that is happening before, evolving and changing before our eyes. There's also some benefit to just getting back to basics and getting the team equipped with a process that helps you stay ahead of it and maintain that human expertise that all of us have to bring to the table to be able to distinguish what's good, what's bad, where the risk is, that we're not going to be able to outsource to any tool. So I would just say, also take stock of the important foundation that you need to build to address the shifts that Brian and Jeff just outlined that they expect are coming down the pike.
Great. Yeah. I mean, having the foundation there while you're, trying to move so quickly is just going to help you, because it's going to continue probably at this pace. At least I believe it's probably going to continue at this pace for some time. So we're going to move into questions. Brittany, keep me honest here. Should I read from the chat, or do you have a list that you would like to go from?
Yes, we'll use the ones in the chat, but then there's also some in the Q&A, but I think it would be good to start with, we have sort of a scenario, I'm going to give some context to this one question from Samuel in the chat. So they write, we are tracking hundreds of brands and executives daily in our proprietary AI tracking and analysis platform. We're seeing ways to immediately influence ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, AI overviews. For us, it is tied to understanding empirically and at scale the most influential sources that these AI models are using in real time based on peer analysis, for example, corporate website, Wikipedia. What powerful levers are you starting to see to influence AI models quickly for reputation?
Jeff, maybe I'll put you on the spot for this one.
Yeah, the answer is influence AI. I mean, that's the model we're using, and to make it more useful answer. Okay, so the first thing, and this gets to a point that Caitlin was making, you need to establish some kind of baseline and know where you're at. Okay, so beginning by monitoring where your brand sits across some key metrics. We look at bias, we look at accuracy, we look at public sentiment, and we look at something called magnet, which is like unaided consideration, right? After you live with that for a couple of months and looking at that for yourself and relative to your competition, then you have an idea where you're at. Okay. Like we try and discourage people from trying to fix a problem. Like somebody types something in, they're like, this is wrong, we need to fix it. Relax. Okay. Get a holistic view of your own brand over some reasonable period of time. See how that lines up with the competition over a reasonable period of time. And then have the power to do something about it. And that's where, like, influence AI is a starting point. I can tell you where you have a problem and who it's with. Okay. But it's in partnership with brands where we use the kind of surround sound content that you're all expert at making every day as the basis for training the LLMs to the right thing. So I think the answer is, first, you can't live without a tool. You can't be blind to what's going on in there. Start with that tool to establish a baseline for yourself and your competition, and then leverage that tool together with the kind of things you already make in the marketplace to change where you're at and exert some influence.
So you're not seeing any type of change, because I've heard a lot of people, like Caitlin actually mentioned it as well, talk about like Wikipedia suddenly has more authority as well, or corporate websites that are like making sure that you're updating your corporate website and sort of putting more content on your blog and those type of things, that they suddenly then have more authority, and that authority translates into the summaries. Do you think there's been any shifts, or you think it's kind of still the same?
I haven't seen en masse brand owners beef everything up right away. I think it's the pause, the hesitation that's really hurting everybody. And I think that they're going to. I like to think that discussions like this are going to allow people to be like, yeah, we better get going. And in bringing everything up to speed, it isn't one-to-one. It isn't just the website. It's literally everything you do. And then there is a second step. Just because all the right stuff is out there still doesn't mean that the LLM is saying the right thing. So that's where a tool like ours comes in to help close that loop.
Got it. Awesome.
I just wanted to add on to that one, if it's cool. Earned media, oldest thing in the book, more important than ever. There's a reason that these AI companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars licensing earned media content, because they know that it is authoritative, it's expert, it's authentic, it's trustworthy, right? So earned media, tons. Social media, same thing with Reddit being now contracted with OpenAI and Google for training data. So we know that Elon's Grok AI is looking at all of Twitter. Yes, I still call it Twitter. Sorry. So I think that aside from a dynamic remediation tool like Jeff's, it's really about what are the tried and true marketing things that we're doing. Taking another look at your Wikipedia presence, like Caitlin mentioned earlier, bringing these things together and making sure that they're all aligned in the same direction, which is how are we getting our story told in a way that gets picked up by these AI answer engines to better position us with our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. I heard maybe some thread in the answers, but just in case we have another question, how do you measure how do you measure success for influencing the Gen AI answer engine? Do you have a benchmark, or how often do you check the platforms? Yes, that's whoever feels most comfortable taking that.
I can just tell you how we do it, right? So we have, we look across 3 verticals. We look at the specific product or service. We look at the competitive marketplace, and we also look at the employer brand. And for each of those, we have 4 key metrics: the bias for or against, the accuracy, the public sentiment, and that unaided consideration magnet I talked about. And you really need to see it over time. So the first snapshot you'll get will be interesting, but we find that in 2 or 3 months, you get a pretty darn good sense of what your baseline is for yourself and relative to your competition. But it has to be through that. We find it most useful through specific verticals and across those 4 key metrics.
I think it's going to be different for everybody, to be honest with you. That's why I said, like, it starts with auditing what's there today, setting a vision for where you want to go in the future, and then monitoring and measuring that change over time. So everybody's going to have something different. Hey, we had a huge issue a few years ago that's still plaguing us. Well, you know what the best cure for that is? An unbelievable deluge of positive stories, right? You're never going to be able to erase the internet. Somebody said that in one of the Q&A questions that you cannot directly manipulate AI results like you can owned media. That's true. So just like you can't directly turn off the internet, you can't directly remove a social media post. You can't necessarily change what the AIs are saying, but that's our job as marketers, as communicators, as PR agents, is to get out there and figure out ways to influence the media of the day. And that's today's media.
Thank you. We have a question from Jill Carpolati. What are some effective ways that you've helped clients or your own organization test new messaging/narrative before launching AI tools?
I'll bet Caitlin has an awesome answer for this because she and her team have done so much with rolling out tools.
Well, one thing I will say, and I saw another question in the chat about, I think, the upskilling piece, and it kind of goes to that. I would say, any tool that you have, like if you have any sort of social listening tool, if it's Sprinkler or Meltwater or Cision or any of the other many tools, there are also some great sort of, inexpensive tools nowadays that allow you to do this. Gosh, you can be, I don't know, like my kid's school talks about, the AI integrations, right? It's just everybody's jumping on this in some form or fashion. And so you can also help and be that good steward to the vendors who at scale can build things that work for you. So I would say that, we've sort of looked from a reputation and like social listening standpoint, we've kind of tried to develop those benchmarks for ourselves to see what those, what that looks like, and also using it for competitive analysis. I would say one team that we have from a message testing standpoint, I don't really have direct insight into that question, but if you have any SEO professionals in your team, they're usually really, really knowledgeable, and they want to learn about this stuff too, because that's, the future of their job as well. I mean, it broadens their, the scope of their role. So I think it's working with some of those smart people who are bringing other insights in to be able to to kind of inform you of what's working. And then also thinking about what are the tools that you have at your disposal, from kind of a competitive standpoint, to and your agency partners, of course, because they're seeing, when we talk to Brian, it's not just about Dell. I mean, he has, visibility into what other organizations are doing, to be able to sort of see what's working, what's not, what's moving the needle. You can also use it for just kind of what's resonating. You all of a sudden have these insights. So we've really tried to lean on a lot of our vendors to see what they can bring to the table, and they feel pressure too. And so it's important, as a paying customer, to push them on that, but it also helps them keep iterating and delivering things for us. So I'd say that for us, it's been sort of getting the right people and maybe some of the non-traditional participants in some of those conversations to be able to help see this strategy more broadly, because not only do you get buy-in, but they're also able to kind of help. Like our SEO team is enormously helpful to help. I'm thinking about our blog, for instance. I mean, they have great insights that people don't necessarily take advantage of about trending keywords or, things that are really important that are driving that content. And I mean, being able to incorporate some of their insights, even if you're not totally there yet, it's going to help, right? And so I think it's that incremental progress wherever you are, to be able to start influencing. So yeah, that's helped us a lot to rely on those agency and partners and vendors for their expertise on this.
Awesome. I think we have time. Oh, sorry, Brian, you want to go ahead?
I was going to say one lesson that I've learned pretty quick is that if you just buy tools or build tools and throw them out and say, hey, go use this, nobody's gonna. Where we found success is looking at, hey, what are you doing today that's really difficult? And what are you doing today that takes a lot of time, but you don't find it that valuable? And looking at those and saying, okay, let's rebuild these processes from the ground up. Let's go back to first principles. Let's look and say, what are we trying to do here? How can we do it? How can we use AI to make it more efficient and effective? And if you take that, then the right way to do something, or the way you want people to do something, becomes also the easier way to do something. And that I always found is the best way to manage change, is to make the thing that you want them to do the thing that is in their best interest. So start with folks and really understand what's the work that they do and how could AI help them do it better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I think that where we're seeing a lot of challenge in terms of my clients as well is that there's an expectation that you teach people about the tools and you roll them out and one training is enough. It's not. This is a very comprehensive change management strategy that needs to start at the foundational level, to have a real understanding of what these technologies are and how you use them, and then training over time, and then checking back in, and then a fully adaptive incentive strategy as well. And all coming back to showing people how it's going to benefit them, but make their lives better as well. Brittany, I think we have time for one more, or no? Should we wrap it? What do you think?
I think just a good one to close on, and I can take note of this, or we can share over email, and then I can link to the recording. Any resources that you've tapped into learning more about the topic that you'd recommend? So yeah, I think certain research or tools you had mentioned along the way. Do you want to share any of those now, and then I can attach those? Any resources that you found helpful?
I don't know if I found a specific one, but I have the luxury of living in this space every day. I just actively read something about it every day. There was something I saw 2 days ago or last week about this idea of beyond efficiencies. And it was a very articulate point of view on what we've been talking about here. Like, the machines will write this very basic content and they'll optimize it, but that's table stakes. That's not how you win. So what's beyond that is some kind of really cool sort of creative partnership between human creatives and AI, where it's the ideas that matter, and ideas are king. And it's a fun time in this industry because everybody's got a new analogy, everybody's got a new metaphor, everybody's got a new perspective. And right now, I just think read, like actively search out and find the things that work for you, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have to form your own opinion on it. It's not what I say or what Brian says, and start reading.
Yeah, and start experimenting, to your point. Like we all learn differently, but I'm in these tools every day, all day long. I test out new startups at least 3 or 4 times per week so that I can really understand what's real and what's not real. And that's how I've been able to go super, super deep. So I think we'll wrap here. Thank you all so much. This has been amazing, really great insights. What stood out for me is like main takeaways is like start, but just by monitoring. What are they saying now, right? Get the baseline of what matters to you. Adapt your content accordingly, sort of like looking at natural language, thinking towards the long term, and then focusing on the high quality authoritative content that's really going to make the difference, because any type of content now, it's going to get harder and harder because it's become so easy. And then continue to watch the space and educate yourself because it's going to keep moving. But this was really great. IPR will definitely be watching it as well. We appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all. Bye.